Okay, the first question for Courtney Perdios.
How about opening remarks?
Oh, sorry, opening remarks. Sorry, we'll have Courtney start, and then we'll have Frank answer the first question. Courtney.
Hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here tonight. My name is Courtney Perdios, and I'm a first-time candidate running for a seat on the Quincy School Committee. My husband Steve and I live with our 3 daughters in Quincy Point. My 2 youngest are in 3rd and 4th grade at Clifford Marshall Elementary. My oldest attended 5th grade at Point Webster Middle School and has just started her 6th grade year at Central Middle School in the APC program. My family and I are very active in our community. We volunteer at our church, our kids' school, and environmental advocacy groups. For the past 7 years, I've been an active PTO volunteer and leader, both at Clifford Marshall and on citywide PTO. Through that work, I have learned a lot about our school system and have learned how to use my voice to advocate for our students, parents, teachers, and staff. Some advocacy achievements that I'm most proud of are leading a petition to stop the proposal to put 4th graders into the new Southwest Middle School, collaborating with Mayor Koch to distribute $180,000 worth of new Chromebook computers to all of our elementary schools, so the financial burden of getting that necessary classroom technology would no longer fall to PTOs and parents, and being one of the leaders of the campaign to bring the Community Preservation Act to Quincy, which has funded many projects across the city, including outdoor classrooms and school playground upgrades. I entered the race for school committee because I really enjoy doing this advocacy work and would love to be able to work on issues currently facing our schools and our students in a more formal way. Another important reason that I'm running is that right now no other candidate or current school committee member has younger children in the Quincy Public Schools. As a parent with daily firsthand interaction with the system at both the elementary and middle school level, I feel that I can bring a perspective that's currently missing from the conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's always nice to meet people, and especially in a very familiar place to me. I lived in Quincy most of my life. My name is Frank Santoro. I attended Quincy Public Schools, kindergarten through high school, right here at Quincy High School, North Quincy High School, excuse me. Little slip. I'll tell you why in a little while. But I met my lovely wife, Linda, here at North Quincy High School in the 10th grade. We then had 2 children, Laurie and Michael, both attended Quincy Public Schools and North Quincy High School. We have 4 grandchildren, 2 of which just graduated, 4 grandsons actually, 2 of which graduated from Quincy High School recently, and the other 2 being 4 and 2 years old. I taught in Boston and Brookline most of my life, and while I was teaching in Brookline, I actually served on the school committee here in Quincy in the late 80s and early 90s. And when the Central Middle School principalship opened up, the then superintendent, Eugene Creedon, asked me to apply, which I did, and became the principal of Central Middle School. I stayed at Central Middle School, and then the superintendent, the new superintendent, Dr. DeCristofaro, actually asked me to apply for the principalship at Quincy High School, the new Quincy High School, which I had a big hand in helping the design. And if you haven't been in that building, please go. I see 2 of my fellow students here tonight actually working. Nice to see you both. I want to say that being able to help design the new Quincy High School was very important. It actually earned me the Quarry Visionary Award when I retired, because it's a remarkable place, and we tended to change the way education was being done between the Career and Technology program and regular education. Very proud to say. Quincy Public Schools has been great to myself and my family, and after I retired from Quincy High School, I just want to give back. And I see myself contributing in many different ways in a leadership position once again, and just ask for your help in getting me there. Thank you.
So the first question is for Mr. Santoro.
The Massachusetts Department of Education has reported that while 39% of the students of Quincy Public Schools are Asian American, only 3.5% of the teachers are also Asian American. What do you think about this disparity, and if a problem, how would you address it?
That's a very good question. As a matter of fact, it's not just the Asian community. We are getting a large number of Portuguese and Armenian students entering our high schools as well, our whole school system. So immigrant staffing is very important. And while I was a principal at Quincy High School, we did our best to make sure we hired the most qualified people, and so that students could relate to who they were being, who was teaching them. The issue is we got to get more people to apply. Places like UMass, where you are, we need to get more Asian people to take education as a course so that they do apply. And I guess working with local colleges and colleges to make sure that we can prove that education is the place to be, hopefully we'll get more candidates.
I agree with Mr. Santoro. I definitely think that we need to be encouraging Asian Americans to apply. We need to be competitive. Maybe we need to look at wages, things like that. We need to outreach to Asian American communities, groups like Quarry, and find out, how best we can reach the population there. I also think that it's really important for our students to see someone who looks like them. We just did the vocal survey. And we found on that students were, it's a survey that students take to see if they're comfortable at school. And what they found was that some of the books that they were reading, the biggest concern was that a lot of the characters in the books didn't look like them. And I think that that's very important, not only in our curriculum to have kids be able to identify with the curriculum they're learning and having that reflect their community, but also who they're learning it from, their teachers, their principals, their staff, everyone from custodians all the way up office staff. I think it's really important not only for teachers, but the entire Quincy Public Schools administration.
Thank you very much. This next question is for Ms. Perdios to begin. Most communications sent from the schools to parents and families, including text messages and emails, are in English. Do you believe that these communications should be multilingual, including in Chinese and perhaps Vietnamese?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I think communication and trying to figure out how best to translate materials all the way out, but especially from the information coming directly from QPS, it's very important to get that in the language that you're going to understand the best. Those little devices you have tonight are really great, but it's not going to help if you're getting a phone call or a text message that you don't understand. So it's very important on PTOs, as far as I'm concerned, my experience, we struggle trying to get out information just from our parent-teacher groups, volunteering, movie nights, things like that. It's very difficult. So the only thing I can say is we might need more interpreters. On Quincy Public Schools, we might need that to help translate different things. I do think that we should take a look at what the most popular languages are spoken, and I do believe Chinese and Vietnamese are going to be high up there. My kids go to Clifford Marshall, and we have 35 languages spoken there, so we find it challenging because we want to make sure that most people can get the information, everyone can get the information, but we can't do it in 35 languages. So it is a real challenge, but I think that we can get there if we just have those conversations. Sometimes I think as a system, if the conversation's too difficult, we kind of give up, and I don't think that's the right approach. I think even if we don't know the answer, we need to kind of keep pushing through, work with groups like Quarry to figure out how best to access that, to get that information to everyone.
Yes, it's very important to be able to communicate with everybody that's within your building. I know that as a principal, we did our best to try to reach people that spoke different languages. We even tried to change meeting times. We know that a lot of people work in the evening, and we tried to change meeting times so that they happen during the day. We tried a number of things, but this might be a good avenue to include Quarry, especially in a lot of the kids that are volunteering for Quarry, to help us translate things, because it's a very time-consuming thing. A school could put out, many different messages within the course of a day, and it would take a lot of people to assist and making sure that all languages were met. I especially think that the special ed IEPs and the things that go home dealing with special ed really need to be translated carefully so that parents fully understand what's being said.
This next question is for Mr. Santoro to provide the first answer. What will you do to expand opportunities to enroll children in low-cost, high-quality preschool and after-school programs?
Well, preschool is something that's going to, well, actually all of them are going to depend on funding. One of my goals is to make sure that the Quincy Public Schools takes advantage of all the grants that are available so that we can include things like preschool. I also think that after-school activities are very important because that's where you get kids to meet each other, share their different backgrounds. I used to walk into a cafeteria at lunchtime specifically to look at the tables to see who was sitting with who. Hopefully that on a given table you'd see many different countries represented rather than the kids just sticking to their fellow students. So I think the more we add clubs and activities at the end of the day that kids can be involved in, the better that diversity will be shared and kids become familiar with each other as they learn each other's cultures. But it all takes additional funding, which is very important.
I agree. It does definitely come down to funding. I know we have a really good preschool program going on now at the De La Chiesa. I know they do a great job there. So I think taking advantage of those programs for preschool, and as far as after school, also definitely having, I think it looks different at every level. So at elementary, it's almost more like just a child care. And I know that there are a couple outside vendors that do that at some of the elementary schools. I know that there's space limitations, and I think they're pretty expensive as well. So definitely finding a low-cost alternative would be fantastic. I think it would be a really good service for the students of Quincy Public Schools. Middle school, absolutely. I think as you start to get the after-school programs, that's going to be, it's not as much childcare. You want to keep those kids engaged. You want to give them a chance to do homework, but you also want them to be learning something new. You don't want them to ever kind of stop learning. So if they can be learning a sport, if they could be learning robotics, if they could be learning any of those things, 3D printing, they have so many different things already in middle school offerings and high school as well. So I think that they do a pretty good job right now in middle school and high school having those. It's not exactly after school care, but it is an opportunity for them to be learning more. I think the grants, finding grants, all the grants we can for everything, not just preschool, before school, after school care is definitely important. And maybe working with like the South Shore YMCA to figure out if there's a way that we can work with them on costs, things like that. Yeah.
Great. This question is for Courtney Perdios to give the first answer. Do you see a need to expand civics as part of the Quincy Public Schools curriculum?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that?
Do you see a need to expand civics as a part of the Quincy Public Schools curriculum?
Yes. Civics was the word I was missing there. Yeah, so that's okay. I thought you said cities. I'm like, are we going to expand our city anymore? We're kind of doing that already. Yes, civics is extremely important. When I've been door knocking since April. I've knocked on 4,000 doors, and absolutely, I have heard over and over again, civics, history are things that our students need to be stronger in. They really do feel, parents do feel that it's not coming across quite as well as they would like. Being able to get involved in your community, being a good citizen is absolutely something that should be taught in school. Kids should be able to, being a successful student isn't just learning math, learning English, learning that type of stuff. It's also just how to be in the community, how to be a good community member, how to give back. And you definitely need to learn all of that stuff. You need to learn where we came from, how to get involved, and have the confidence to be able to do that. So yes, I do think we should be expanding that. And I think we are a little bit. They just came out with some updated civics curriculum that it does look pretty interesting. I haven't seen the details of it, but I think it is being outrolled this year.
I do think it's important, and it's too bad that everything today is generated by our MCAS tests, and a lot of teachers spend a great deal of time making sure that the standards are met based on what the MCAS is testing. I think once the social studies test comes, and it will come if it hasn't already, it's about to, you're going to see that more and more classrooms will take civics into account, and I'm sure that the MCAS will as well.
Let me ask this follow-up question. Since I'm a political science professor, do you think that this idea of building civics would be to add a classes on civics or build it into a regular part of the social studies and history curriculum perhaps? So do you see this as trying to institute specific civics courses or build it into part of the curriculum of other programs?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I have to really look at the curriculum to see if it's, you know, if there's, I assume you're the person to ask. I always like to say I'm not the expert in the room on every topic, so that one I would definitely like to be able to talk with professors like yourself and find out, is there enough material there? Do you feel that there's enough material there to have that? And if you did, I definitely think that I would support that. Definitely, we have a really great superintendent's leadership team. Maddie Roy and Erin Perkins, they're fantastic about creating, you know, overseeing the curriculum in the Quincy Public Schools, so I'd, you know, be working with them as well on that, along with the school committee members. But I think I would defer to the professors and see if, and the teachers to see if they thought that there was enough there, and I would definitely support it if they felt that.
Yes, I think it depends on the level that we're talking about. I think it's a lot easier to include it as a separate course at the elementary level as part of what they're doing within the social studies, having their own unit. At the high school level, it may be a little different, more difficult because of what's being taught means what has to be taken away as you prepare courses at the high school level. Although I think it could be part of something that's already on the table in terms of what we offer the kids. Especially local government, I think that's important to add upon. So I think at the high school level, we might have to include it in something we already have.
So this question is for Mr. Santoro to give the first answer. In selecting a new school superintendent, I believe you're going to be selecting the new school superintendent in the Quincy schools.
I think that's news to Dr. DeCristofaro.
We had heard about this, and supposedly the staff had checked and said that this was actually in somebody's literature, one of the candidates' literature. So let me put it this way. If you selected a new school superintendent, what kind of qualities and characteristics do you think will you be looking for?
Hopefully Dr. DeCristofaro stays a while, because I think he's a great man and he's done great things for the city. I would say that if I was to be a part of choosing a new superintendent, I think it's important that the person be able to be a good leader. You have to be a good listener. The superintendent obviously can't be an expert on everything that's taking place within your city, but he could, if he's a good listener and he establishes a good team around themselves. I think that's probably the most important part of being a superintendent. And I always thought there are two things that are most important about any administrator, and that is everyone safe and is everyone learning? And if those become the priorities of the superintendent, then I'd be happy as well.
Yes, we'll see if Dr. DeCristofaro, you know, whenever he decides that he wants to retire, he's done a fantastic job with the Quincy Public Schools, so would wish him well there. So in the next superintendent, I think, so definitely there are a lot of characteristics I would be looking for, but I think the thing I'd be most concerned with is the process. I want to make sure that that process is transparent. I want to make sure that there's enough people on the committee, the selection committee, that would be representative of teachers, that would be representative of all of our community's parents, just so that it's not kind of handpicked. I would really like that to be a transparent process, that we're really able to get someone good on that, in that position. I do also think they should be a good listener. I think that they should really try to be encouraging the communication between families, the school committee, and the schools. Teachers, everyone the communication has to get a little bit better, I think. We all kind of need to be on the same page and be able to listen and make decisions together. I really do feel that decisions are better made when we listen to all the voices. That's really important to me as well. So definitely being a good listener, but also being open to bringing people from the community in to have that dialogue with them. And also kind of having that open door policy like that. The superintendent, Dr. Christopher, is very charismatic. He's a very good people person. He's really good with kids. He goes into the school buildings. I've seen him there, and he is fantastic. I mean, he can connect with the kids, he can connect with the adults, he can connect with the staff. So I think that that's really important as well.
Great, thank you. One final question before the closing statements, and we'll begin with Ms. Perdios. And this is a question that you raised about resources. So schools need resources, and property taxes are the principal way in which they're raised. But many people in writing questions to us had indicated that they thought the property taxes themselves are actually too high in Quincy, and this is going to be a question for the at-large council candidates perhaps. So property taxes are too high, and yet we need more resources. We need creative ways to raise resources. What are some of those creative ways by which you think the Quincy schools can raise resources if in fact the taxes may not be the principal way in which they can add to the resources for the city?
So yes, we the school system right now is a third of our city budget. So it definitely does take a lot of our resources and does use a lot of tax dollars. I do think it's worth it. I think we have excellent programs in our schools. I think we have excellent teachers. I think I would really, I know cuts come and go, and we've been lucky the last few years to not have any cuts, any significant serious cuts to our programs. The mayor's been really fantastic about supporting whenever there's a hole or whenever there's a need. He's always been able to supplement the budget from the general fund, which has been fantastic. But I do think that it's really worth it. Our special education segment is very expensive, and I know that there was a new proposal to have a special education building. If that does come to be, hopefully that will be a process that, again, has a lot of communication with the experts on that topic behind it, and there's enough time before we roll that out to have everybody's, to do it right. But if we are able to kind of bring some of those special ed kids that we're sending out of district back, that is going to be a pretty big savings to our, to the schools. So I think, you know, maybe we could start there. I don't know if that's a creative way to get money back into the system, but I think that's kind of the point of the building, is to get families more engaged here with the school, special ed families, and also to save some money on tuition there. And I do think, you know, Mr. Santoro indicated earlier, grants, everywhere we can get grants, and donors choose. I know our teachers use a lot of grants, are going for them all the time. You know, maybe looking for another, you know, grant writer that we could just be looking for, and any state funds we're able to get. I think having alliances at the state level, I know the mayor has a lot of connections at the state level also, so I think just using those connections all we can to get all the resources we can is really important.
Thank you. We've been very fortunate to have a mayor that has given us a certain figure every year, because the city of Quincy, through its history, has not always been so fortunate. And what we get as a school system totally depends on the figure that the mayor gives us. And we've been very fortunate with Mayor Koch that he's been kind to the school system, because he knows that the city's school system is the #1 resource, or the #1 asset, and has a direct correlation to your property values. Yes, taxes may be a little high, but also your property values are pretty good too, based on this school system. This school system is a good one, and we're very fortunate that it continues to be that way. But I'm even thinking that it might even be worth some money to hire someone that researches grants. I know that many cities and towns do that, if not in the school department, at the city level, where they can constantly are researching places to get grants, because there's a lot of money out there that probably Quincy is not taking advantage of. Also, the state has just changed the formula. I had a discussion with the mayor yesterday on how that formula has changed and how much money comes to us with the Chapter 70 money. We're fortunate that we gained a little bit based on the new formula as well. So again, thank you to our mayor for what he's done for our school system, and hopefully we can research a little bit better to find more money out there to get some things that we don't have now.
Okay, so we're at the closing statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Santoro this time.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity again to be here tonight. I do want to share some things besides being an experienced administrator and former school committee member, some of the things that I've been able to do. I was president of the Beechwood Knoll PTO as well as the Citywide Parent Council. I was a member of the Quincy Park and Recreation Board for 15 years, member of the Arts Lottery Council, a member of the design team for the new award-winning Quincy High School. I was an education consultant for the architect firm SMMA, which just helped build Somerville High School similar to Quincy High. I was an education consultant for Boston 25 News. I was a professor at ENC and taught a course on school climate and safety, a current board member for the Quincy Asian Resource Incorporated, which I'm proud to say. I'm a member of the Quincy Art Association. I was a recipient of the Quincy Asian Resource Visionary Award. I was a recipient of the Richard J. Koch Youth Service Award, a member of the North Quincy High School Basketball Hall of Fame, and most recently appointed by the mayor as co-chair for the History, Art, and Culture Group for the Quincy 400 celebration. I'm also pleased to say I've been endorsed by the Teachers Union here in Quincy, the Quincy Education Association. So I feel as though that I have the knowledge and I have the experience, and you people have 3 votes on November 5th. I'd love for you to give Frank Santoro one of them. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to just use my kind of 2 minutes here, my 2.5 minutes of closing time. I just want to list a few things, a few ideas that I have for the school system, and then I'll kind of close out after that. So I have a lot of new ideas I'd love to be able to bring to the committee. I'm a fresh kind of face. I have a lot of ideas. I ask a lot of questions, but I do have a lot of energy. So let me share with you just my top 4 priorities. I'd love to be able to bring advanced curriculum options to younger grades. Right now, our advanced program doesn't start until the 5th grade, and I'd love to be able to work with the superintendent's leadership team to bring those advanced courses down to kind of elementary grades, younger elementary grades. It's just really important that if a student comes into school kind of knowing how to read, knowing how to add, that we're keeping them engaged and challenged. That's important to me. The second thing I'd like to do is take a serious look at equity across the system, specifically the buildings, kind of the condition that they're in. If there's things that are on the school improvement plans that we haven't addressed yet, I'd love to be able to get to that. Third, I'd love to be able to, so vaping is a really serious concern in our high schools and our middle schools, and we do have some prevention efforts underway, and those are necessary, absolutely, but we do need a policy. We need a zero tolerance policy that kind of takes that vaping equipment out of our schools. We don't have to have any of our students kind of have that in their face. And lastly, I'd like to be able to improve communication. I'd like to better include the voices of QPS families, faculty, and staff in decisions and discussions. Good things can always be better if we do listen to more voices, as I said earlier. So I just want to take a minute to thank the team at Quarry for organizing and hosting this Candidates Night Forum. I really enjoyed having the opportunity to speak to so many of your constituents and learn about your concerns. I hope to be able to continue to work more with your group in the future. In closing, I just want to say that I've learned that advocacy is sometimes as easy as a phone call, but more often it takes diligence, resolve, and hard work. I believe school committee members should personify those qualities. I believe they should be able to lead discussions, even difficult ones. They should be someone parents can go to and ask for help. They should be someone who isn't afraid to stand up for what's right, fair, and equitable. They should be able to work with others to protect our children and make our schools and the education they provide the best it can be. I have done all of these things as a parent volunteer, and I will continue to do so as a school committee member if elected. Again, my name is Courtney Perdios, and I respectfully ask for your vote for school committee on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Frank Santoro and Courtney Perdios for their coming here tonight. Really appreciate it. At-large city council candidates. And I think we're going to be joined, Noel DeBona is coming, but we should start. And you've been very patient. So my name is Paul Watanabe. I'm a professor of political science at UMass Boston and director of the Institute for Asian American Studies. So I want to thank you for spending your evening here tonight with us. and we want to thank the candidates for doing so as well. And let me begin at the outset to thank our organizers of this forum, Corey, the Quincy Asian American Resources Incorporated, and the Asian Community Development Corporation. And the community sponsors, South Cove Community Health Center, Fox Rock Properties, and we also want to thank North Quincy High School for hosting this evening's event. And I'm going to say that there are some other people who are helping out. There's our timer here. We want to make sure we thank her, our photographer here, and somebody doing translating over here, both of these individuals. It's not an easy task, so we want to thank them as well for what they're doing. So, and Noel has shown up. Great. So our format is we're going to have 2-minute opening statements by each of the candidates. We'll have a series of questions, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 if we get through this fast. And each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to the question, and then we'll end with 2-minute closing statements. And once again, the questions were collected from the Asian American community. We pared those questions down to a smaller group of them, and we've edited them, and then we're going to do them in order. And we're going to begin with opening statements, so I hate to do this to Noel DeBona, but he's the first one up for a 2-minute opening statement. Noel DeBona.
Thank you. I just want to give the opportunity to thank Quincy Asian Resources for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. My name is Noel DeBona. I've been the at-large council for the last 4 years. I'm in my 2nd term, seeking my 3rd term for 2 years. I was originally on the school committee, and before that I held some positions as park boards and stuff. I have a big family background and family values, and what I really care about is the future of our city. I have 3 young little children. My wife, Neve, we live here in Quincy. We wanted to settle here because we think Quincy has the future to be the best we can be. I got involved in politics because I wanted to do things to the city that I have received from coaches, teachers, professors, other people that mentored me to give back to my community, give back to people like yourself, help not only the constituents but also the Asian community here in Quincy. We have a lot of topics we're going to talk about tonight. A lot has to do with public transportation and the quality of life for all of you. I am going to be there for you. I have been there for you, and I will continue to fight for your quality of life in the city of Quincy, whether it be every day, going to work, or spending time with your family. I want to thank you tonight. We'll continue on the conversation with more information. Thank you so much, and at the end, if you could help me out on November 5th with one of your votes for Councilor at Large. Thank you.
Nina Ling.
大家好，我名係梁小晴，響我喺個 Quincy 度你嘅議員。我想我哋晒 ACDC 同 Corey 聽我出嚟同你傾 Quincy 啲嘢。其實我想我哋晒你出嚟同我傾㗎。我講得開心話啦，我要對你同會唔會講開心話啦，所以我講翻啲英文咁啦。My name is Nina Liang, and I'm excited to run for re-election as your city councilor at large. My goal has always been to ensure that everyone's voices are heard on issues across the city and to take action to move us all forward together. As your councilor, I've worked to ensure that we have a voice when it comes to downtown development. At the time, there were not engaged efforts and collaborative efforts, and I was able to change the way that we do that to have more transparent dialogue and to ensure that the council could be a voice for the residents of Quincy. As a steward of taxpayer dollars, I fought for fiscal responsibility, holding city agencies accountable not only to their budgets, but also to their missions, cutting unnecessary spending and ensuring that your taxpayer dollars are being used both effectively and efficiently. This term, after years of collaborative efforts with residents across the city and the administration, I successfully started the city's first LGBTQ commission. And when the MBTA would not communicate with us, I demanded they provide in-depth updates to the city and the residents, and we got them. While I'm proud to point to these accomplishments, my work is far from over. One of the biggest challenges we're facing here in the city is community affordability. That's why I'm committed to sponsoring and continuing to fight for an ordinance to provide homeowners with some relief through a residential property tax exemption. I'm also working with my colleagues to overhaul our city zoning law. I want to make sure that we have collaborative efforts with both our residents and our business owners to ensure that we have a cohesive vision for our city that protects our neighborhoods, encourages investments, and promotes quality economic development. We need to ensure that our government doesn't forget its first priority, making sure everyone in Quincy is represented and has a voice. It's why I ran for office, it's why I love being your city councilor, and it has and always will be my first priority. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 5th, and I look forward to answering your questions. Ngoy
Ann Mahoney.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking Corey and thanking BCBG for having us here and for North Quincy High School for hosting us. I want to say hi to all the people out here that have come to listen to us. I'm Ann Mahoney. I'm a candidate for re-election to Councilor at Large. I was on the school committee for 12 years. I ran for councilor because I truly believed we needed to have representation on the council. Representation for everybody who lives in Quincy. We have a very diverse city and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be represented in the city of Quincy. Some of the things that people are afraid of are the fact that we're getting priced out of Quincy. All these new high-rises are coming in, and we're not looking for affordability for people to be able to stay here. Our schools are being jeopardized because there's a lot of overcrowding that's happening in our schools, and we need to make sure that generations can stay here. To back up just a little bit, I'm a fourth generation family that lives in my house, my great-grandparents' house. They came here in 1890. They were the original owners of my house. I was very proud to be able to move into that house and raise my 3 children. My parents, who are 89 and 92, I give them 90 and 93 because I think that's important. They live up the street in the house that my father grew up in. They taught me the value of making sure we take care of our neighbors. My mom came to this country when she was 17 years old by herself. She couldn't stay in her home country because they couldn't afford to keep her there, so she came here to start her life here. It was very isolating, but she had 6 kids and she taught us to make sure that we took care of not only each other, but the people who lived in our community, because community is where value is. When the first Asian immigrants came to Quincy in the 70s when I was in middle school, they made sure I realized for the very first time that people were coming to live in our community that didn't speak their language, and it was more fearful for them than it was for her. And she made sure that I knew that it was important that we reached out and we made friends and you made them feel comfortable. Well, we've been here for a while, and your generation has come. Some of you are new here, but you've been here for a while. Although in Quincy, you have to be here for generations and generations before you're here forever. But I like to think that we're one community, whether you've come here and just started to live here or if you've been here for a long time. And we need to learn and respect each other and make sure that we're listening and representing you. So whether you vote or you don't vote, the most important thing is that you have a voice that listens to you, that your fears are being heard, and that we are listening to what your needs are. So I humbly ask for your support once again on November 5th so I can continue to be your counselor at large. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Frank Rubino. I'm running for Councilor at Large. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and being with us this evening. I also want to thank all the sponsors of tonight's event. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a first-time candidate. I live in the Quincy Point neighborhood. I'm 34 years old. I have a background in financial management. I earned an MBA degree from Bentley University. I have a background in financial management, as I mentioned. I've done complex budgeting, financial forecasting, revenue and expense tracking, proposal pricing, and I've been in both the public and private sector. I enjoy being active and involved here in the community, here in Quincy. I was the treasurer of Quincy Pride. We organized Quincy's first LGBT Pride Day. I was also a volunteer tax preparer for Quincy Community Action. Excuse me, I was a volunteer tax preparer for Quincy Community Action Programs. I was also the vice chair of the Ward 2 Civic Association. If elected, some of my priorities will be taxes, traffic, overdevelopment, as well as bringing some more medical services to Quincy and working on affordable housing issues. These are issues that I've been hearing from residents all across the city. For the past 5 months now, I've been going all around Quincy, all the different neighborhoods, speaking with residents, and these are some of the issues that are most important to Quincy residents. If elected, it would be an honor to serve as one of your city councilors. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to begin a series of questions. We're going to begin with Nina Liang. 90-second responses from everyone. In a relatively short time, Quincy has undergone some dramatic changes in the diversity of its residents, including significant growth in the Asian American population. How do you assess these changes? Should this diversity be embraced or resisted? Nina.
Thank you for that question. So I think it's really important to note that, the influx of the Asian population is not the first time that Quincy has seen new immigrants to our homes and to our neighborhoods. My parents were a part of that process 35 years ago. They came here from Chinatown to Germantown and made Quincy our home. I was lucky enough to be able to be born and raised here. And in that time, I've definitely seen a huge influx of people from the Asian American community coming here to find a place to call home. And I think it's something that we should absolutely embrace. We've seen a lot of people open up businesses here, contributing to the tax base that we have here in the city. We've seen people adding to, what the work is going on with the schools and making sure that their kids are active and involved, either getting involved with the PTO themselves or getting their kids active in things like ROTC or the sports that are going on here. And they've recently become really active in coming to community meetings, to planning board meetings, to zoning board meetings, participating in what the future of their neighborhoods are going to be. I think regardless of who comes into the city, regardless of what they look like, making sure that they feel connected, making sure that they have a voice, making sure they are represented is the most important thing, because what I found is that regardless of what language you speak, your tree still needs to get cut down. Your road still needs to be paved, your sidewalk still needs to get fixed, your trash still needs to get picked up. And again, I think it's important to recognize that regardless of what language people speak, it's most important to make sure that they know they have a voice in City Hall and they have somebody that they can go to connect with and feel a part of their community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, when I was in the school committee, I can tell you that one of the best places to immerse different languages or different communities or different cultures is in the schools. 350 different languages are spoken in our Quincy Public Schools. Yes, a high priority of them are of the Asian descent. Many different descents, different languages are spoken, but that is where it all kind of melts down. We have lots of different interpreters to help families to be able to mitigate that when they're in the schools so that they can help their children. One of the most beautiful things you see in the Quincy Public Schools is when a child comes into our schools, maybe in the younger years, first grade or kindergarten, and in that first year when they come in, they look very frightened, they don't speak the language, they go home and they're speaking a different language at home, but they're immersed into English, and they learn the language and they speak it most beautifully, and they're able to bring it home. But there's another side to that. For those of us who only speak one language, yep, that's all of us who are born here, I only speak one language. You know what's amazing is when my youngest daughter was in preschool and one of the grandmothers came to pick up her grandson, and they told the grandmother told her grandson to pick up his lunchbox and his jacket, and my daughter quickly understood what the grandmother was saying and was telling him to pick up his jacket and his lunchbox. My daughter played with this little boy every day, and she learned something that I didn't teach her, and that was a different language. If we were to respect that and learn from each other, we can have a really incredible community from all the different things that come in Quincy. And that is what makes Quincy the strongest, is that we have a diverse population. It is the thing that's kept me here. It is the reason why I wanted to raise my family here. And it is one of the reasons why I'm very proud to be from Quincy, is the diversity that we have in our city. And it changes every year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of diversity in our community. I'm all for it. I think diversity is very important towards building a strong community. And we should be thinking of diversity in all of its forms. So the Asian American community as well as the LGBT community. I identify as LGBT, and I remember six years ago when I first moved to Quincy, I was looking around the city and I thought to myself, wow, there really doesn't seem to be a whole lot here in Quincy for the LGBT community. And I became the organizer of LGBT Quincy Meetup, and that organization provided networking opportunities for the LGBT community, and it went a long way towards making sure the LGBT community felt welcome in our city. Again, I'm very supportive of LGBT diversity in our community, and I think it's a very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I just want to let everyone know that being on the school committee prior to the council has really helped me working with younger children. Education is very important for our youth. I know, growing up in a household where Dad came over 100 years ago, our ancestors from Italy, they were hardworking people, and they went through a little bit of diversity then. And my mother, coming from Thailand, born there, came to the States and learned the culture here, living in a household where the second language was English for my mom. And having that Asian background has really helped me to understand the Asian community as well. In 2004 and 2006, I visited Thailand and saw the diversity of my relatives. Some of them were also Chinese. There's a big Chinese population in Thailand, and just being able to communicate with the children. The children knew English as their second language, but the elders, the older folks, the grandmothers and grandfathers could not, and that's how we communicated. I communicated through the children, and that's why I think it's very important for us to continue to educate our youth and diversify the city of Quincy. So I am open arms for encouragement and diversity. It's a melting pot. We're changing every day. And I think at the end of the day, all we want to do is work hard and contribute to our family. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Ann Mahoney will begin. Despite the growing number of housing development projects in Quincy, many believe that affordable housing options in the city are inadequate. Is the lack of affordable housing a problem, and if so, how would you work to increase it?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is a problem. We have many developers who are coming to city and they're saying it's very desirable and they would rather put 10% into a fund rather than actually create affordable housing. But we're running out of space in Quincy too. The Watson House is a perfect example of something that was successful, and we should see more of those that are happening. I would like to see or imagine that it could happen too at Hospital Hill in a much less dense situation, but it's not going to. The reality of it is the developers in the city of Quincy unfortunately own our politicians. They actually do. They really, it's a scary thing, but right now we need to stand up to developers and we need to tell them that we expect certain things, and we need to actually start developing more workforce housing for people in the city of Quincy so we can keep people here in the city of Quincy. It shouldn't all go to luxury apartments. We often talk about the people who are bringing here to Quincy, yet there hasn't been any economic development that's come from it. A lot of the restaurants in downtown are struggling because the people who live in the very apartments that they've come to are not getting the traffic that they anticipated they would get. That's what luxury has brought to us. But at the same time, our working class families are getting priced out of Quincy. Their homes are being taken over by developers, and multi-units are coming up, and their apartments are being slowly taken away from them. So yes, this is a very, very important thing that we actually make sure that we go after and take care of for the people of Quincy so that we can keep our diverse community and not make it only about the people, the haves and not the have-nots. So I do think that's something that we're going to be looking at with the zoning, and then we have to make sure that our planning board is insisting that the developers that do come into Quincy actually do start putting in affordable programs into the buildings that they're building. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we can all agree that affordable housing is a problem here in Quincy and it needs to be addressed. Affordable housing is a problem not just with increasing rents, but increasing property taxes. And it definitely needs to be addressed because it's definitely an issue that I'm hearing from many residents out there in the community. Now, Quincy has an affordable housing trust fund, and there was a Patriot Ledger article from last spring which mentioned that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has something like $13 million sitting in it, but the Quincy Housing Authority is having trouble spending that money and finding ways to spend that money, basically. So if elected, I definitely want to put that money to good use and make sure that it goes directly towards affordable housing initiatives, because that's what that money is earmarked for. And we need to make sure it goes directly towards affordable housing, and it can be used for voucher programs if people are having trouble. For example, if people are moving and they have trouble with first and last month's rent for a landlord, we can create a voucher program for that. And as I mentioned, property taxes also need to be addressed. Quincy has a senior property tax exemption, but you only qualify if your assets, not including houses, not including real estate, is less than $48,000 in assets. So I would be interested in expanding that senior property tax exemption. Thank you.
Over the last 4 years, I've been the City Council's representative for the Community Preservation Committee, and over the last 4 years, I've worked with 2 developers on giving them funding, grant funding from the CPA funds to fund projects for affordable housing. So I've worked on projects already. The Watson was the first one. That is over 20%, over 40 units were affordable housing. And right outside here, there was another development for 28 units in the last few years. And I'm currently working with a developer on getting more affordable housing in Quincy. So I have been working on it, I'm working on it now, and we'll continue to do it. Now, the Affordable Housing Trust, a lot of the developers have put in lieu of paying down into the fund. I'd like to see that disperse into other areas. Now, we look around the city and we see a lot of redevelopment. It's very important that our blight housing, which is our rundown houses and rundown areas, need to be redeveloped. It's very important to move the city forward to redevelop these areas, and they're great avenues to do affordable housing into those areas, especially close to the MBTA, the Red Line, and our T-stops. I'm looking forward to working with these developers. I've got a working relationship with them and asking them to do at least 10% instead of in lieu of paying into the fund. Things are, the interest rates are really good right now, so people are taking advantage of it development-wise. But at some point, the economy will definitely take a little bit of a dip, and I think the affordable housing will be a tool that comes back, and we can actually make affordable housing. So I thank you for the question, and I'm encouraging other developers that are out there tonight, but I'm willing to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Like I was saying in my introduction, I think one of the biggest problems we're facing right now is community affordability. There's a lot of families who have placed their roots here and are in danger of getting priced out of their homes. And there are a lot of young professionals and young families looking for a place to call home that, again, can't afford to call Quincy home. And while there's a lot of cities and towns in Massachusetts that are dealing with this problem, I think it's imperative that it's something we step up and deal with right now. There are 4 things I'd like to continue to push for as your current city councilor at large, and hopefully after November 5th as well. The first is, like I said earlier, the residential property tax exemption. Now, we are one of the cities in Massachusetts that do not offer this to homeowners, and certainly we don't have to start at its highest right now at 35%, but we do need to start somewhere. We cannot continue to say that because we have a low commercial tax base, the burden falls on the residents. That cannot continue to be the answer for how we fund the much needed services here in the city, and I'm committed to finding a way to make this exemption work. Another thing I would like to explore is increasing the amount of commercial that we have here in this city. The commercial tax base is incredibly low right now, and we are running out of room to develop. As we move forward and as we are talking to these developers who are interested in developing in our city, we need to make sure that they prioritize commercial spaces. The more commercial we have, the better it is for the residents to be able to scale back on what it is that they're contributing to the city. Another thing I'd like to look at is continuing to support and work with organizations like ACDC who are committed to coming into cities like Quincy purchasing properties and keeping them as affordable units. They are the kind of developer I want to continue to work with. They're the kind of developer who's already been doing this important work here in the city, going across the city, finding properties at affordable housing, buying them, and maintaining them as affordable units. Those are the kind of developers that we need to have come and commit to stay here in the city, invest in the city, and make sure that everybody who calls Quincy home can actually afford to stay here. So those three things are things that I've been working on, again, as your counselor, and I think it's important that we make them top priorities moving forward. Thank you.
The next question, Frank Rubino will give the first answer. The ranks of the police, fire, and city government agencies do not reflect the diversity among the city's residents. Do you believe that there needs to be greater representation of Asian Americans in these departments? And if so, how can it best be achieved? Frank?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm all for diversity in all of its forms. So yes, I do believe that we need some more diversity in our police force, in our firefighter force, and as well as in other areas of our city government. I would also be interested in initiatives such as diversity sensitivity training within our police force, as well as our firefighters, as well as our emergency response team. So our EMRs, the emergency response team, I think it's very important to have diversity, not just in police and fire, but in our city government. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and this was a question 2 years ago as well as the same one. Really what we really need to work on is educating in our high school level, letting Asian Americans and Asians know where the testing is going to be for the police and fire exam. Giving them resources in those earlier infancy years in the middle school and high school level to allow them, men and women, both, to be able to understand that these are where the testing is going to be done, and this is what you can do. There's a lot of interpreters that can be a really good tool for the Asian community to have other backgrounds in the police force. Obviously, we know we have to work better at that, and we need to diversify not only with men, we also have to have women. We still don't have any women on the fire department, which we had one in the academy this last time around, and I think we need to market it a little bit better at the high school level and allow men and women to be able to become police officers and firefighters. There's a really big need in the city of Quincy for this. As our city grows close to the 100,000 mark, which we'll have the census next year, we need to also increase our public safety. Public safety, besides education, are the forefront and cornerstones of moving the city forward. We must make sure that we're protecting our citizens in the city and making sure that we have enough oversight. We also have police officers who are on bicycles, and we also have undercover police, non-uniform police officers. I'm looking forward, if you want to talk to me a little bit afterwards about anything for the future, but I thank you for this question. We had this 2 years ago as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I absolutely think that this is a problem, and yes, we absolutely need more API representation for our first responders. You know, we are lucky here in the city of Quincy that our first responders, whether they're police or fire or even the ambulance, we have a great relationship with them. You know, talking to residents across the city, regardless of their background, have never not been able to pick up the phone and call when they needed help, and that's something I'm really proud of for our first responders here in the city. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, I think for those of you who are in this room that are pretty active, we could probably name the same 5 API police officers and probably the same 3 API firefighters. And that is absolutely a problem. You know, I think one of the issues is education, absolutely. Letting folks know as they're going through school and as they're trying to figure out what their next career path is going to be, that going into service is a really admirable and really an incredible thing to do. You know, going into public service myself, when I decided to run for city council, My parents thought I was insane. They said, can't you go get an office job? Can't you go work at Amazon like your sister? They're not used to looking at government, first responders, public service employees as the right path to go down. But it absolutely is. To be able to serve your community, to be able to give back to others, is something that we hold dear, and to educate them on that and to let them know that there is that connection there, I think will be a great first step in encouraging kids in the school systems and having their parents support their efforts to come into public service. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a great question, and I did ask it while I was on the city council when the chief of police came up and spoke to us, and the fire chief. The civil service test is provided, and it has to call for certain things, and we do need people to come and take the civil service test. Now, if you didn't take the civil service test, then we're not going to be putting people of any other descent other than probably the connected people in the city of Quincy, because that's mostly who gets hired in those positions. And it is something that I really watch. I watch who gets hired, and I watch how they get hired, and I question this, because when I go out and I speak at a lot of the places that I speak to, and I have an interpreter, the first question I ask is, what happens if you have to call an emergency vehicle? And just the other day when I was at Bauer House, I heard from a resident who said that they got picked up from the EMT and they didn't speak her language, and they brought her to the emergency room at Quincy Hospital, but she had to have her gallbladder out. She stayed at the Quincy Hospital for hours and upon hours until her daughter came and had to discharge her from Quincy Hospital to bring her to a hospital to have her gallbladder taken out. That should never happen, because we didn't have the right interpreters, we didn't have the right people working on our EMTs and our ambulances and in our police and our fire. Now, the people that we do, they're fantastic, but we do not have enough. When you have a diverse community, you have to answer, it should mirror. We should be mirroring on our police and our fire and our schools the same as what our audience is in the city of Quincy. The higher population of whatever language it is, we should be also having, so that we have those interpreters to be able to make sure you feel safe. I mentioned before, my parents are seniors. When the ambulance comes to their house, they don't want the ambulance lights on, and I'm telling you right now, it's a very scary thing. But you want to make sure that you're safe, and you want to make sure that you're not fearful, and it's a terrifying thing when you need help, when somebody can't speak your language. So I do fight for this. I ask those questions, and I will be following up with the City of Quincy and the emergency room at Quincy Hospital to find out what happened in that particular case for this woman who sat in a hospital and was not able to be able to communicate. So these are things that we have to address immediately. Thank you.
I should just note, as I did in the previous debate with the school committee people, that Massachusetts Department of Education indicates that in Quincy, 40% of the students, about 40% of the students are Asian American, while only 5% of the teachers are Asian American. So I don't want you to comment, but it's the school department, the disparities are huge in terms of those that stand in front of the students and the students in front of them. So this question is for Noel DeBona to speak first. How can the city's agencies and departments expand their ability to communicate orally and in writing with residents in languages other than English?
That's a very good question, and they started a few years ago with the balloting. When you go in to vote, they put these in other languages. Not only Chinese, you put them in Vietnamese and other languages for your ballot to find out how to go in and vote, who you can vote for. I think we need to do a bilingual across the board for other, whether it be for hospitals, whether it be for South Cove, all these different agencies. We have to work collaboratively as an administration. Now remember, we're the legislative body of government here with the city council. We can initiate ordinance changes. But we're not the administration, and the mayor and the administration actually run the day-to-day operations. So we have to initiate it from the city council level to make sure that this stuff is initiated out there in the community. So it's a great question to ask tonight, and it's something we could actually work on collectively as a city council to initiate some type of ordinance changes to make sure and maybe mandate that you have to have it bilingual for a lot of different occasions, whether it be celebrations across the city, anything that's put in the Quincy Sun or the Patriot Ledger. It's up to us as legislative body of government to initiate these type of changes. And I'm glad we're out here tonight talking about these issues. You know, walking door to door, I get a lot of constituent questions. And tonight, we're getting even more. It's a great question to ask tonight, and I'd like to really work on this and work with the City Council together and do something for the future. But thank you for the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking, and I don't think she's here tonight, but Betty Yao in the Mayor's Asian American Commission in City Hall has done phenomenal work for one person. You know, the good news here in Quincy is that she's not alone. You know, we have amazing organizations that have been in the city for quite a number of years. Two of them you see in the table in front of us, Quincy Asian Resources, ACDC. We also now have Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center, we have South Cove Manor, we have South Cove Community Health Center. We have businesses and small businesses run by people who are invested in the community and giving back to the community, showing up to community events, and interacting with residents that they know who they are. You know, while this is all well and fine and it is happening, we still need to do more. You know, for me, it's very front of mind. Everything I do on a daily basis is done in 2 languages. And when I go out there and I talk to residents, that also happens. But it goes back to the fact that regardless of what language you speak, the issues are still the same. And if people aren't going to be reached out to in the language that they speak, how can they feel connected in sharing the issues that they have? You know, for example, when the MBTA came to this school, sat in this auditorium, and had a meeting the day after the Lunar New Year, for an issue that's happening right in this neighborhood, where, let's face it, we have a very high AAPI population. That was a complete smack in the face. Why? Because it's not top priority for them. We have a planning board meeting coming up for the Wollaston redevelopment, where again, there is a high AAPI concentration of residents and business owners. And it took working with the planning board to make it a priority that the surveys and the flyers and all of the information around it were translated as well. This has always been a top priority for me throughout my entire life. It continues to be a top priority as I work with different departments and great nonprofit organizations here in the city who are supporting that work. But I need everyone to make sure that they're speaking up and asking for this to be a top priority as well, because I can't do that alone. I have been fighting for it. I will continue to fight for it. And until the day comes where translating our information, our important information for resources across the city becomes the norm, I will not stop fighting for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with Nina on this. This is a situation where, again, I'll go back to, we should be mirroring our community. If 40% of our population is of Asian descent, we need to be able to communicate to you, to let you know both the things that might be of emergencies to you, but also the things that are just of day-to-day value for you to understand. When your trash is being picked up, what's happening in your community, what events are happening, when voting is happening, when you can register to vote, how you become a U.S. citizen. There's a lot of different things that we have to do. I'd like to thank Betty Yao, I'd also like to thank Bonnie Koch, Frank Poon, and then the Corey, the ACDC, and so many others who have helped in that situation. I'd like to thank Meg, who's out here in the audience, who's helped me tremendously. There are people who do help translate for those things, but when it really comes to be important is, you know, when we had, I can remember this past summer when you weren't supposed to be able to swim in the Wollaston Beach, we didn't have it translated. That was another one that Nina was actually fighting for. I was too, actually. But those are times when we really have to let people know that that's a dangerous thing and we don't want something to happen to you. So we do have to do better at that. But really it does come down from the mayor's office and it has to be a priority for who is in office. The same thing with who is becoming your firefighters and your police. It is civil service, but at the end of the day, these are things that are decided not by the city council. They're oftentimes decided by the leader of the city of Quincy. And it's a value for you to know because you want your leaders to actually represent your needs. I believe I do represent the need. I do fight for the things that I think are important for people because I want you to feel safe in the community that you chose to live in. The family values that we have here, we all share, and you should never be fearful, and you should always know what's going on. Tomorrow night there's going to be a big storm. You could lose your electricity, but you may not understand what's being said because it wasn't translated to you. These are important things that we have to all work together for so that we can all feel safe in our community. But we do need your help, and I'm so proud when I see people at the planning board coming out to speak and to represent their neighborhoods because they want to make sure their voices are being heard too. So thank you for being committed to coming here tonight and being committed to your community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a member of Quincy Access Television. I've worked very closely with them over the years, so I would be very interested in reaching out to them on bilingual initiatives that they can be doing, such as having an interpreter for some of their telecasts. I've also been involved with Quincy Community Action Programs over the years, so I would be very interested in reaching out to them to work with them on bilingual initiatives, and it has to be not just print materials translated into multiple languages, but also having an interpreter at various community events, various community functions, and anything that the city sends in the mail. So if the city is sending something in the mail, it should be available in multiple languages. I also think the city council, when they work with business owners and new businesses, they should be making this a priority. So, for example, if a new restaurant were to open up in Wollaston Center, the council should be working with them to see, to make sure that the menu is available in multiple languages and that there's bilingual needs as far as new restaurants that might be coming to Wollaston Center, Quincy Center, North Quincy Center. And as I mentioned, I've worked with Quincy Community Action Programs and Quincy Access Television, so I can reach out to them on different bilingual initiatives that can be initiated. Thank you.
So a final question before we get to the closing statements, and Nina Liang will answer first on this one. Ideally, as the cities and population and businesses grow, the availability of services and critical infrastructure should grow as well. What is your assessment of the match between growth and the availability of public and private services in Quincy? Nina.
Thank you. I mentioned a little bit about the balance between commercial and residential development, and I think this is where it really comes to a head. We are growing as a city. You know, if everyone is able to get to the census, I really do believe we'll see a population of over 100,000 people here in the city of Quincy, and that growth is not stopping. We need to make sure that the increased burden that has in our community services, like our schools, like our first responders, like the services that come out of City Hall, that grows alongside with it. But that growth comes at a cost, and that cycles back to the residents who are trying to call Quincy home and trying to stay here. Again, this is where we need to look at that balance and say, we need to shift our focus to increasing our commercial base. When we increase our commercial tax base, not only are people spending here in this city, we're getting a higher increase with our taxes, we're getting our tax base shifted from the burden of residents over to commercial, and we're not having additional people moving in here and adding to the burden of the city. I'm all for growth, but we need to have smart growth here in the city. We need to have growth that captures the vision that we want for the entire city. We can't keep doing it piecemeal. We can't keep relying on these incredible nonprofits, as great as they are, when they come to serve the city and to offset the services that are desperately needed. We cannot rely on them forever. We need to have long-term growth and a long-term plan that goes along with it to make sure that we are providing the services that are necessary to give everyone the best quality of life that they are looking for when they move to the city. Thank you.
So this is a concern of mine, that we have a lot of residential development that has happened. And we haven't paid attention to the traffic, to the schools, to the overcrowding of our streets. We call it, pass-through traffic that are coming from other communities. When we have an enormous amount of open storefronts, they might be small, but they're open. The downtown, we developed the downtown with the idea that all of these things were going to come into the downtown, but you still see lease signs in the downtown, and we're not filling them. We have an economic development group in the city of Quincy, yet they don't have a plan, and when you ask them that question, they'll say it's not their job. But it is their job. What we lack in the city of Quincy is a plan. We do not have a branding committee. We do not have an idea of what we want to market or who we want to bring here to the city of Quincy. But in the meantime, our surrounding communities are having the amenities, the stores, the types of places that we're all going shopping to, but we're not. And what we're missing is that tax base that should be here in the city of Quincy. We can't sit and wait for those things to happen. We have to be active participants in making sure that they do happen. I did call for the city of Quincy to come back with their economic development group and actually explain to us what they're doing. We know that we have open inventory in the city of Quincy, but we're not attracting businesses to come here. And if we did, it would offset into some of the tax dollars that would come from your pockets so that we were able to grow together. The other thing that's happening with the enormous amount of growth that's happening, it's overcrowding our schools, our streets, and our neighborhoods with cars. We do have to take an inventory of what we're doing and make sure that we have an idea of how we're going to grow and grow together so that we are being smart at what we're doing. Those kinds of questions are the kind of questions that I do ask on the council. I ask for all the residents of the city of Quincy so that we can coexist with the development and the growth of our city, so that we can ensure our families are being protected and our neighborhoods are being protected as well, and that we can all have the amenities that we need so that we can coexist with the development that's happening. That's why I'm asking for your help to stay on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no question that Quincy is a growing city. There's a lot of people moving here. We have a lot of new housing going up, new condos, and we have a lot of growth happening. There's a lot of people moving to Quincy as a result of all the new condos and residential developments that are going up. Some of the areas that we need to focus on as far as smart growth and making sure that public growth is happening is in our police station. So Quincy Police Station, it's a very old building. It was built many years ago in the 1920s, and it's in a state of disrepair. And there is a project in progress to tear down and rebuild Quincy Police Station as a comprehensive public safety complex. And if elected to the council, I want to make sure that project is moving forward, that it's staying on schedule and on budget, because a city of our size needs a well-functioning police station, no question. And we also need to bring some more medical services to the city of Quincy. Quincy has the unfortunate reputation of being the largest city in Massachusetts without a hospital. So we need to bring some more medical services to the city. A new urgent care center recently opened up in Quincy Point. I want to reach out to that company to see if they would perhaps be interested in opening a location in Wollaston Center as well. I think that will be an excellent addition to Wollaston Center. My time's up, so thank you.
It is almost like the law of physics. One thing's connected to the other. We have to make investments into the city, which allows other agencies to redevelop and do other businesses, as well as revitalization around our T-stations. Look what happened at Wollaston T-station just recently. Handicap accessible, ADA compliance, new, done over Wollaston T-station, on time, on budget, and it helps for public transportation into Boston. Now we're working on right outside here in North Quincy. And a few years ago, we widened the road out here at East Squantum and Hancock Street, East Squantum and Hancock Street, which allowed the traffic flow to happen. There's happening right now in the DOT on C Street and Quincy Shore Drive. We're leveraging other funding because we're making investments into our city. So it's a two-way street. As we continue to have growth in the commercial, as well as the residential, it'll help our residential taxpayer. The tax rate will go down as our commercial will go up. The trend right now is mixed use. Right across the street here, you'll have a residential unit, and you'll also have a new Target. That's what's looking to be happening right across the street here. And how convenient that would be to not have to go to Braintree anymore. We can walk across the street and go to Target. And there'll be more developments like that happening as we redevelop into our city. It'll allow us to continue to do our road work and sidewalks and bicycle lanes and make it a better pedestrian-friendly city. It all goes together. It's harmony. It's called, complementing each other. And that's how we have to work together with other agencies, commercial, residential, developers, mixed use, and continue to move the city forward. But I thank you, and I encourage that question. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the closing statements and begin with Ann Mahoney. But let me say before we do that I have moderated debates. I've moderated debates for U.S. Senate from Massachusetts, the governor's race, the Boston mayor's race, Boston City Council. and others, and I am quite impressed by what you have here in Quincy. These are 4 excellent candidates. They stand up to as any candidates that I've seen in any debate, so you're very lucky here in Quincy to have knowledgeable and caring people, and I think they care about all the changes and want what's best for you out there in Quincy. So I really applaud Quincy for coming up with candidates and having people with the tenacity, the guts, and the desire to serve you in public office. So I'm really quite impressed by all of you, and I thank you very much. So, closing statements, Ann Mahoney.
2 minutes.
I'm going to stand again. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to thank the moderator, and I want to thank my fellow colleagues who are running for office. I'm going to ask you once again. I wear my heart on my sleeve when it comes to Quincy. I was born and raised here. I believe that all of you, just like my neighbors in my own community, are like my family. I want to represent you. I want to be your voice at City Council. I want to take the fear that you have, if you haven't, out of your day so that you can live your lives comfortably here in the city of Quincy. I want you to know that you can go through things and you can call me no matter what the issue is, and that I'll be there and I'll answer it and I'll come and I'll talk to you and we will work it out together, whether it's in the City Council or outside of the City Council. I worked hard for our MBTA commuters who took the trains in town to make sure that we had alternative ways to be able to get from Wollaston Station to Quincy and Quincy Center, and the Charlie card would be able to use on the commuter rails. For the LGBT Commission, it started at my kitchen table. I invited people that wanted to have a day of pride in Quincy to my kitchen table because it couldn't happen because the mayor didn't want it to happen. It led the way for the LGBT Commission. I reinstated the Disabilities Commission to make sure that we are able to make sure that people with disabilities are being recognized in our city too, that we're being able to provide the right services and also provide the right access for people to be able to be independent in the city of Quincy. It's one of the reasons why people come here. I work very hard to make sure it's going to stay affordable in the city of Quincy. I've organized neighborhood associations throughout the city to stand up against the developers who are coming in and taking over our city and are not benefiting the everyday people who live here. We need to be able to coexist together, and the way we do that is by working together, standing up and letting your voices be heard. Hiring people or voting for people to be your representative in City Hall. People who won't just walk in parades or come to your cookouts, but people who will truly stand up for you, who recognize what your needs are, recognize what your fears are, and go to work for you every single day. You get that with Ann Mahoney, so if you vote for me, Ann Mahoney, on November 5th, I'm number 3 on the ballot, and I do need your help. I thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you and seeing you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Frank Rubino. I'm a candidate for Councilor at Large. I'm a first-time candidate. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I want to thank the sponsors of tonight's forum, as well as our moderator, our host. We didn't talk a whole lot tonight about citizenship, and I know that this is a topic that's very important to the Asian American community. My boyfriend, Ka, is here tonight. He's Vietnamese. Ka immigrated to the United States 10 years ago. And just last week, he found out that he's going to become a U.S. citizen. His citizenship was approved. So we're both very happy about that. Now, I never realized how complex and involved the citizenship process is. That there's a ton of paperwork. He had to meet with lawyers, and it was just a very complex, involved process. So if elected, that would definitely be a priority of mine, sitting down with you and helping with the citizenship process. And one of the ways we can do that is reaching out to Project Citizenship, the Boston organization, and seeing if they would be interested in coming to Quincy to hold an event, a forum on the topic of citizenship and helping people with their citizenship application. Let me just touch upon a couple other things. Again, my background is financial management. I'm a numbers guy. I have a lot of experience with budgeting, and I think that would be a strong asset to have on the City Council. You get 3 votes for Councilor at Large, and I ask that you consider me for one of your votes, and if elected, it would be an honor to serve as one of your City Councilors. Thank you.
Thank you, Quarry, and thank you, North Quincy High School, for having us here tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming here. You know, I have 3 young little children, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I have 2 boys and a girl, Tyler, Aiden, and Nora. I'm married with my wife. We have 3 children in the Quincy Public Schools, and I was served on the school committee, and I care about the education of our youth, and they're the future of our city. So I always say, education first. A few kids that have special needs, and I think special needs is very important as well, to maybe to have the proper funding in place for the city of Quincy. Over the last few years of being your city councilor at large, I've attended a lot of the Lunar New Year's and the August Moon Festival, Quarry annual meeting, as well as being the Veteran Services Chairman, where we have a nice Asian American group of young children, young adults that are part of the Junior Air Force ROTC program here in North Quincy. I've been involved in your community and in the South Cove events that are happening. So I understand the culture. I want to learn more from all of you. I've been knocking on doors throughout the city and talking to different residents about the needs and concerns of the city. I have an open door policy. I continue to hold office hours, and you always have an open door policy where you can come and talk to me about any needs or concerns that you have with the city moving forward. You know, I care about this city. I grew up here. I continue to live here. I want to make sure it's a proper place and a vibrant place for the future of our city. A place you can work, a place you can spend time with your family, and a place that we can educate our children. All of these kind of blend in together with harmony. I always say that harmony, it's all together. We're in this together, and I want to work for you and continue to work for you. I work really hard as being your counselor at large, and I'll continue to do that for the future. You get 3 votes for counselor at large, and all I ask, if you can give me one of those 3 votes on November 5th on Tuesday. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good night.
Good evening. I just want to thank Corey and ACDC again for hosting us here, as well as Paul for your kind words and for moderating us this evening. My name is Nina Liang, and I am your city councilor at large. I'm not the new kid on the block anymore, but that has not and will not stop me from being your voice for our city. It will not stop me from asking the tough questions. It will not stop me from holding people accountable, and most importantly, it will not stop me from fighting for you and the future of our city. I will keep fighting to hold the MBTA accountable. I will keep fighting to make sure that your voice and everyone's voice in Quincy is heard. I will keep fighting to make sure that our small businesses thrive and that every resident that calls Quincy home feels safe and welcome. As our city grows and changes, we need to make sure that our government is not only reflective of our community, but has an appreciation for our past, a focus on today, and an eye towards the future. I had said this earlier and I'll say it again. We need to also ensure that our government doesn't forget its first priority, serving the people of Quincy. It's why I ran for office. It's why I love being your city councilor, and it has and always will be my top priority. This is our city. This is our future, and I am and always will be your voice. So I respectfully ask for one of your 3 votes on November 5th. Ngoy-sai.
So, thank you very much. I have 2 requests. One is for Census 2020, make sure that you fill out the U.S. Census. It's critical. We talk about Quincy growing potentially to 100,000. It's never going to get there unless the residents of Quincy make sure they fill out the census. And I'm afraid that I think part of the government in Washington, the current government, is doing a lot to try to prevent you from doing so, but you've got to make sure that you stand up and be counted for Quincy and for your families and yourself. And secondly, of course, we ask everybody up here and all your friends and neighbors that you vote on November 5th. It's critical you do so. It's a way to get engaged in your community, and you have some excellent choices to make. So let's thank them all for coming here tonight. And finally, let me thank the audience for coming. It's great to have you turn out tonight. We appreciate it very much, and I'm sure the candidates do as well. So thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much.